The black hole within you, a journey into inner infinity. Most people spend their entire lives running from the emptiness they feel inside. But what if that void isn't something to escape from? It's actually the most powerful spiritual portal in the universe. Science tells us that black holes are points of infinite density, invisible forces that bend reality itself. And here's what nobody's telling you. There's one living right inside you. The person who learns to stop fearing the darkness within and dives headfirst into it discovers something religions have whispered about for centuries, that mystics have died trying to describe, and that quantum physics is only now beginning to confirm. This journey isn't for the faint-hearted. It's for the soul that's been feeling a calling it can't quite name, a pull towards something deeper, something real, something infinite. Welcome to the most radical inner journey a human being can take, the plunge into the black hole within. Topic 1. The spiritual metaphor, what lives inside you. Illustration of black hole anatomy, showing the singularity, event horizon, photon sphere, accretion disk, and relativistic jet. Scientists describe a black hole as a region of space-time where gravity pulls so hard that nothing, not even light, can escape it. At its core lies a singularity, a point of infinite density, infinite energy, and zero volume. Now, here's the part that makes spirituality and modern physics shake hands. Human consciousness operates in a strikingly similar way. There's a place inside every person so dense with potential, so overflowing with untouched energy, that most people spend their entire lives orbiting it without ever daring to enter. That place is what the ancient traditions have always called the soul. The mystics of the East didn't have telescopes, but they saw it. That luminous void at the center of being that simultaneously contains everything and appears to be nothing. The Vedantic sages called it Atman. The Sufi poets called it the beloved within. Eckhart Tolle calls it formless consciousness. When someone first brushes against this inner reality, it often feels like a kind of disorientation. The world they knew starts to lose its grip, old certainties dissolve, and a strange, wonderful gravity takes over. That's not a crisis of mental health. That's an awakening beginning to stir. That's the event horizon approaching. The fascinating thing about a real black hole is that from the outside, it looks like absence, like nothing. But from the inside, it's an entirely different universe. Personal development at its deepest level works exactly the same way. The parts of life that appear empty, painful, or devoid of meaning are often the very regions where the most profound spiritual growth is waiting. The person brave enough to sit with their own silence, to actually meditate in the full weight of who they are, is the one who begins to sense what's truly at the center, and what they find there will change absolutely everything about how they understand the universe. Topic 2. The event horizon, the point of no return. In astrophysics, the event horizon is the boundary surrounding a black hole, the point of no return. Cross it, and there's no going back. The gravitational pull of the singularity becomes absolute. Anyone who has experienced a genuine spiritual awakening knows this feeling intimately, even if they couldn't name it at the time. There's a moment in every authentic journey of consciousness where something shifts so profoundly that returning to the old self becomes impossible. It might arrive as a sleepless night that never ends, or as a sudden, inexplicable sense that the life being lived isn't quite one's own. This threshold is both terrifying and strangely magnetic. The soul somehow has always known it was heading here. Think of Viktor Frankl, who lost everything in a Nazi concentration camp and, in the depths of that unimaginable void, discovered a freedom no one could take from him. Or think of Eckhart Tolle, who hit his own rock bottom at 29 and, in one ordinary night, crossed his own event horizon, waking up as someone fundamentally new. The transformation didn't happen because life got easier. It happened because they stopped resisting the gravity of their own inner truth. The event horizon of spiritual awakening doesn't announce itself with fireworks. More often it arrives quietly. It comes in the form of a restlessness that won't leave, a growing sense that something in the world is deeply off, or a sudden hypersensitivity to energy that makes crowded places feel unbearable. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of expansion. The soul is growing beyond the container it's been living in, and the container is starting to crack. Self-knowledge at this stage becomes not just desirable, it becomes an urgent calling. And the question that slowly rises from that crack is the most important one any person can face. Who am I, really, beneath all of this? Topic 3. Energetic hypersensitivity. When the universe speaks, one of the most disorienting and least talked about aspects of spiritual awakening is energetic hypersensitivity. Once the inner journey begins and a person starts to genuinely open up to their higher self, their nervous system becomes, in a very real sense, a finely tuned antenna for the energy of the world around them. Things that never used to bother them suddenly feel overwhelming. The noise of a shopping mall, the emotional static of a tense conversation, the low-frequency buzz of a toxic environment. It's as though someone turned up the gain on every sensory channel simultaneously. This heightened sensitivity isn't a disorder, it's a spiritual vision coming online. The body is translating frequencies of reality that the ordinary mind can't yet process. Consider Nikola Tesla, who reportedly experienced extreme sensory sensitivity throughout his life, finding mundane sounds unbearable, seeing flashes of light during moments of intense thought. The pattern is undeniable. The closer a person gets to the center of their own consciousness, the more porous the boundary between inner and outer reality becomes. The universe starts to feel personal, alive, and deeply communicative. Practical navigation of energetic hypersensitivity matters here. A person experiencing this can start by creating deliberate daily rituals of energetic hygiene, spending at least 20 minutes outdoors in nature, limiting social media consumption, and taking quiet time to meditate each morning before engaging with the outside world. Books like The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron or Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza offer extraordinary frameworks for understanding this phenomenon. The key insight is this: the sensitivity isn't the problem. The lack of tools to work with it is. And once those tools arrive, what was once a burden becomes a superpower. Topic 4. Spiritual isolation. The dark night. There's a peculiar, aching loneliness that visits almost everyone who takes the inner journey seriously, and hardly anyone warns them about it. It's called spiritual isolation, and it's one of the most misunderstood phases of spiritual development in human history. The 16th century mystic St. John of the Cross wrote about it in agonizing detail, calling it the dark night of the soul, a period where the universe seems to have gone completely silent. Old friends start to feel distant. Old pleasures feel hollow. Old identities start to peel away like dead skin. Here's something that needs to be said clearly. This isolation isn't abandonment, it's initiation. A black hole doesn't let even light pass through its event horizon unchanged. The dark night strips away everything that isn't real, everything that was borrowed, everything that was performance. In that stripping, the soul is left raw, exposed, and, here's the twist, more genuinely alive than it has ever been. The great philosopher Carl Jung described it as the necessary confrontation with the shadow, the buried parts of the self that were never fully integrated. Facing the shadow isn't comfortable, but it is, without question, the gateway to real inner peace. For someone walking through this darkness right now, the prescription isn't to force lightness or pretend everything is fine. The prescription is to sit with it, consciously, deliberately, with curiosity instead of terror. Journaling is extraordinarily effective here. Write down what is disappearing from life, and ask honestly whether those things were ever truly aligned with the higher self. Read Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross or When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, 2 books that feel written specifically for this season. The darkness isn't the end of the road. It's the road itself, leading somewhere the old self could never have reached. Topic 5. The Singularity. Meeting the True Self radio astronomy image of the supermassive black hole's shadow at the center of galaxy Messier 87. At the center of every black hole lies the singularity, a point where all known laws of physics break down, where space and time as humanity understands them simply cease to function. The spiritual parallel is staggering. At the center of a genuine inner journey, there is a moment where all the stories, identities, wounds, and ambitions used to define the self simply stop working. What remains is something that has never been created and therefore can never be destroyed. The mystics call this the higher self. The Zen tradition calls it the original face. And when it's encountered, even for a single breath, it changes everything. The encounter with the higher self isn't some floaty abstract concept reserved for gurus and monks. It can happen to anyone. It can happen in a moment of absolute stillness in the middle of a crisis, or even in the simple act of gazing at the stars and suddenly feeling, with absolute certainty, that one is not separate from the universe. This is what Ram Dass spent his life pointing at in Be Here Now. 3 words that, applied with total sincerity, become a direct portal to the singularity within. The soul, at its core, exists only in the present moment. Everything else, the past, the fears, the future projections, is just the accretion disk spinning around the real thing. The practice of self-knowledge, at this depth, stops being a self-improvement project and becomes something far more radical. A dissolution. Not a destruction, a dissolution. The way salt dissolves in water, becoming part of something larger without ceasing to exist. To meditate deeply, truly, without agenda or performance, is to deliberately approach the singularity. The Waking Up app by Sam Harris or the guided sessions of Muji on YouTube serve as genuine guides for this. But the most essential tool is the willingness to sit with oneself in complete honesty, to stop performing even for the inner audience, and let the true self step forward from the silence. What emerges from that silence is beyond anything that can be described, but it absolutely can be lived.